I want you to obey my instructions.
Let's use the word, I want you to do what I told you to do. I want you to do what I told you to do. And if you were a giraffe, you would give that to the person with a little card that said, but please do as I requested, only if you can do so with the joy of a little child feeding a hungry duck. Please do not do as I request if there is any fear of punishment motivating you. Please do not do as I request out of a hope for reward or that I will like you if you do. Please do not do as I request out of guilt, shame, duty, obligation. Life is too short to do anything for anybody out of that. So what I'm getting at is when we do make a request, we want it to be sure that the person trusts it's a request and not a demand. So we'll come back to that, but let's just work on the clarity of the request to begin with. Yes, so what is your request?
I would like you to do what was agreed upon.
Okay.
Give me the space to complete my thoughts.
Oh, too vague. Give me the space.
Let me complete my
Let
thoughts.
me is not doable. Let me show you what I mean. A woman said to her husband, came to a workshop, I want you to give me the freedom to be myself. He says, I do. No, you don't. I said, hold it, hold it. Give me the freedom is not doable. Let me? No, that's not doable. Allow me? It's not doable. What do you want from him when you say, give you the freedom to be yourself? It's embarrassing, yes? But say it. Oh, it's embarrassing. Say it out loud. What do you want when you say all of that? I want him to smile and say it's okay no matter what I do. Okay, now you're honest. You see, so what do you want?
I want to express myself.
Yes, you can do that. Nobody can stop you from expressing yourself.
So I'm getting interrupted.
You want the other person to wait until you finish speaking
Yes.
before starting.
Yes.
Okay, that's the doable action. So how do we know? You can only tell whether it's a request or a demand by how I treat you if you don't do it. That's what tells people whether we are making requests or demands. What is their memory of how we act when we don't get what we want? If people have in their memory any punishment on our part in the past when they don't do what we want, any blame, it will now be hard for them to trust that we are making a request and not a demand. It will take the joy out of giving to us. So let's follow that example a little bit more for me to show you what I mean. So I say to you, I'm really lonely this evening and would have a need for some company. Would you be willing to spend the evening with me? And you say, Marshall, I'm really preoccupied with some things at work and would really need some space to myself this evening. Could you find someone else to be with you this evening? And here's my reaction. Two days later, you, what's the matter? Nothing. You, come on, what's the matter? You knew how lonely I was. If you love me. Now, was it a request or a demand? See, so we can't tell from how nicely it's asked. We need to see how the person treats us when we don't do what they want. That's when we trust that they make requests or not demands. So we are going to pay for every time in the past when we used any coercive means to get what we wanted. So now at least we don't want to pay for that anymore. We want to be sure that whenever we make a request, it is a request. Now that doesn't mean the other person will trust it, even if it is, because unfortunately, there's been so much coercion in our world that even if we are making a sincere request, the other person might hear a demand. I was working in one school system with a group of students that the school district labeled as socially and emotionally maladjusted. Now, from what you've learned today, was that a jackal school system or a giraffe school system? Yes.
It sounds like in your example that the person was really disappointed or really let down.
Not let down, that's a diagnosis.
Okay.
They're really disappointed. Really hurt.
Okay. So how could they have expressed that without being a demand, but not suppressing their fact that they're really disappointed?
They could say, so you have a lot to do right now, and it would really meet your need to be by yourself. Yeah. And the kind of mood I'm in right now, I really trust that you would meet it better than anybody else I know. Is there some way that we could find to get your work done and still meet my need for connection tonight? That's what we call dogging for our needs. You see? That shows respect for the other person's needs. I'm not trying to use any guilt or manipulation, right? I'm just trying now to find a way to get everybody's needs met. Okay?
And so then if the person can't find replacement?
If the person cannot think of somebody to replace them, it will not be a problem. It will only be a problem if I put on these ears and receive in what they said a rejection. You see, if I hear a rejection, that's the problem.
It's not okay to say I'm disappointed?
You can say I'm disappointed as long as you don't say you disappoint me.
Okay.
And as long as you don't stop after saying I'm disappointed. See, I'm disappointed. That's just another way of saying you disappointed me. I'm disappointed. We always have to end a feeling. At the very end of it is going to be a request. See? So we don't just say I'm disappointed. We'd have to say, we have to take responsibility for asking for what we want. Given the other person has this other need, okay, what do you want then from them? Well, the jackal doesn't like that game. They don't like to have to be responsible for what they want. They'd rather say, well, if they love me, you see, if they were any kind of friend, I think it's only fair that they want to control by guilt, shame. So the school district asked me to work with these students that were labeled socially and emotionally maladjusted. Poor school system doesn't realize that labels lead to self-fulfilling prophecies. When you label people that way, they're going to behave that way. Come on, be honest. If you are labeled socially and emotionally maladjusted, you're one of those students, doesn't that give you permission to have fun in school? Labels lead to self-fulfilling prophecy. So I knew it was going to be a rough day just by that label. So when I walk into the classroom, it already starts. Half of the students are hanging out the window, screaming obscenities at their friends in a courtyard down below. So I made a request. Excuse me, I would like you all to come on over and sit down, please. I'd like to tell you who I am, what I'd like to do today. Half the students come over. I wasn't sure the other half had even heard me, so I repeated it. Would you all please come over? Now everybody comes over with the exception of two young men. Just my luck, the two that didn't come over, the biggest ones in the classroom. And again, I wasn't too sure they'd heard me, and I was praying it might just be a problem with acoustics, so I said, would one of you two gentlemen tell me, please, what you heard me say? Yeah, you said we had to come over and sit down. You see the problem? I make a request. He hears a demand. So I said, sir, I have learned to always use sir with people who have biceps like he did. Especially with the tattoo on top of the bicep. I said, sir, could you tell me how I could have let you know what I was requesting so it wouldn't sound like I was telling you what you had to do? He said, huh? See, that's a radical paradigm shift for somebody who's been educated under domination conditions, domination structures where authorities claim to know what's right, you have to do it or else, you see? So it's a radical paradigm shift in giraffe schools where people don't make demands. They just make requests. So I realized this is not going to be easy with this gentleman. He's probably carrying with him a lot of traces of being punished when he doesn't do what other people want, or blamed. I'm not expecting him to give it up right like that. So I said, sir, how could I let you know that I was requesting something of you without it sounding like I was bossing you around? I don't know. I said, just what's happening between you and me right now is much that I wanted to talk about today, because I was wanting to look at a way we could interact where nobody bosses others around. And I didn't expect life to be so easy. That was all he needed. He trusted at that point that I wasn't trying to tell him what to do. And he came over and we had a very cooperative day. But as long as people hear our request as demands, they have only two choices: submission or rebellion. And neither of us are going to connect us with people in a way that's good for anybody. So the main thing that's the difference is not how nicely we say it, but how we treat people when they don't do what we want. Now, let's hear a few of these so we can see what kind of reactions you might get back. If you openly express your heart, you try to your best not to criticize, not to demand, what do you get back?
She gets excited and defends herself.
Well, I need to hear the specific statement, but I don't know what you mean by defends herself. What does she say? Got to be specific. For the next exercise, we need to know specifically what the person says or does. See, that's your diagnosis that she's defensive. What does she say?
Sometimes things happen and I'm not ready to leave when we agreed.
Well, sometimes things happen and I'm not ready to leave when I agree. Okay, that's what the person says.
I can't do that because I have a hard time connecting with people as partners.
I can't do that because I have a hard time connecting to people as partners.
This is the response back.
Yes, what did the person respond back?
He says, nothing I do is ever good enough.
Nothing I do is ever good enough.
Okay, here. I guess I should go through the whole thing. She says she doesn't like the way I wash dishes or make the bed.
Yes.
I feel angry and resentful.
Yes.
I feel as I express because I need to be accepted for my willingness and ability to do a job the way I do it.
Yes.
I would like you to acknowledge my work positively.
Even if I don't feel like it? How do you want me to, how would you like me to respond positively when an idiot could do a better job making a bed than you do?
Okay, that's the last thing. She would say that she can't because I never do it the way it should be done.
Yeah, so the problem there is with the present request. What do you want from this person? I think what you want is this. I'd like at least some gratitude expressed for my willingness to do what I did. And if I could get at least the gratitude for that first, I could better hear how you would like me to do it differently. Would that be closer?
It'd be closer, but I'd still like her to accept the way that I do it.
What does accept mean? Now we got to translate accept into a doable request. What if this person has a sense of aesthetics? You see, I can already tell what the problem is in your relationship. I've already made a diagnosis. You want to hear my diagnosis?
Okay.
You are a slob and she's a neat. See, there's these two kinds of people in the world, slobs and neats. And for some reason or other, they always live together. It doesn't make sense to me. You see, there's so much of this goes on every day about how to wash the dishes, how to make the bed. Now, I'll give away which one I am. I once cleaned the house immaculately. And my partner came home and said, I thought you were going to clean. True story, true story. So you know what I am, right? I wrote her a song that night that goes, if you wonder about the cause of my domestic distress, it's that my partner is antiseptic and I'm a total mess. Last night at 2 a.m. I had to go to the head. In the time it took me, she made the bed. You know? So there are these slobs and meats, and they always get together. I have a plan for world peace. Put the slobs in one hemisphere, the meats in another.
So how does that get back to needs? And now that you've diagnosed
It
how
has to
handle
do
it.
probably with this. And you have to say to the neat, I'd like you to agree that there can be different ways of doing things. Is that what you want?
My solution was that I just don't do it anymore.
Well, a typical slob solution, yes. I could have guessed that. Yeah.
It worked.
I would really like some acknowledgement. First, I'd like some expression of gratitude for what I did. I'm not saying you have to like it, but at least I'd like to hear some gratitude, if it's sincere, that at least that I was trying. Second, I'd like you to agree that there can be different ways of defining what is an adequate way to make a bed. Then, if after you agree to that, if you could say what your preference would be without using words that imply that it's right, your way, that would be a lot easier. Something like that.
Where is it? You sound like you're doing something out of a book.
You sound like you're doing something out of a book. Talk like a real person. Don't use any of this psychology crap on me. Something like that. Yes, yes, yes. Especially they're going to say that when you're a baby giraffe, you know, because you're trying a new way and it's going to take a while and it's going to go slowly. And when I was first learning this, I was having a conflict with my oldest son, and I was sounding like it was coming out of a book. I was having to stop and think everything I said. And the poor guy, he had his friends waiting for him, and he said, "Daddy, it's taking you so long to talk." I said, "Let me tell you what I can say quickly. Do it my way or I'll kick your ass." He said, "Take your time, Dad." Those who know me in my old jackal days are very patient with my sounding like I'm coming out of a book or... Yes.
There's no value in changing who I am. I'm satisfied the way it is.
Yes. There's no value in changing who I am. I'm satisfied the way I am. We can already tell them this person heard a demand, you see. They're hearing a demand as though you're saying they're not okay the way they are. And that would be how I would bet a person would respond if they hear a demand. Different ways that people respond when they hear a demand. My preference is for how my youngest son once responded when he heard a demand. I said, "Would you please hang up your coat?" He said, "Who was your slave before I was born?" You see, I like that way because I know he hears a demand then, right? It's pretty clear. Now, then there's other people who it's harder to guess if they're hearing it as a demand. For example, you say to them, "Would you please come over and just sit on the couch with me and talk with me?" The person goes like this. Okay. Now, if you're smart, you'll say, "Oh no, stay away." They're hearing a demand, you see, but they're giving in. But the worst case scenario, this is the dangerous one, you see, is if the person hears your demand, your request as a demand, and they respond this way. "Oh, sure, I'll do it." And they do it. But they did it to buy your love. They did it because they were afraid that if they didn't, you wouldn't like them. Now, how will you find out? You'll find out eventually. You might find out like this one woman did who showed up at my door in 2 in the morning. 2 in the morning, my doorbell's ringing one morning. It's pouring rain outside. And this woman, not 8 months pregnant, crying. I said, come in. I sit her down in a chair. What's going on? I didn't know how she got there, but she told me that her mother had been in a workshop with me a month before, and she had just called her mother up to tell her about what happened, and the mother said, "Oh, there's a man in your town that you might want to go and talk to." So that's how this woman shows up at my door at 2 in the morning. Now, what was the problem? earlier she said, I just made a little request to my husband tonight, and he said, get out. We've been married 8 years. He's always been so loving, so kind. He's done everything I want, and now he says, get out. Already I knew what the problem was. He was a yes-saying jackal. He hears somebody he loves wants something, and he feels he has to do it to buy love, to prove that he's a loving person. And so how does she find this out? It took 8 years, but then she pays for it one night. And I know I was right. How do I know I was right? I got him out of bed. Why should I be up at 2 in the morning talking to his wife while he's sleeping? So I call him up and invite him over, and sure enough, you see, he was a yes-saying jackal. He just didn't know how to say no. So he had been giving in, for all these years, and then finally this night he snapped. So that's how you find out. After 8 years, she found out that he was hearing demands and lovingly giving in to them. You certainly don't want to ever receive those messages, any one that you've just responded to. You never want to hear what the other person thinks. Never hear what a jackal-speaking person thinks. You'll live longer. So certainly after lunch we're going to say, do not hear what the person thought. Whatever thoughts they expressed, never hear what a jackal-speaking person thinks, especially what they think about you. So we'll show you other options than that. We'll show you how never to hear a criticism. We'll show you all of that after lunch.